Hi, welcome back. This is Rachel with the Book Mavens, and I have some rapid fire reviews to do with you. I have 6 books that I'm just going to give you a quick peek into and let you know how I felt about them, whether or not I'd recommend them, so on and so forth. You guys know the drill. All right, so I do not particularly remember the order in terms of which one I read first. Doesn't really matter. I'm not covering any whole series, so it shouldn't matter. All right, so the first I'm going to talk about is Silver in the Bones. This is a YA novel by Alexandra Bracken, who also wrote, she wrote Lore, and I really liked Lore. But she also wrote that other series that I didn't read, but they made a movie about it. Anyway, she's well known. So, Silver in the Bone, YA, Arthurian, legend-based novel where we have a secret society that hunt down magical items and sell them on kind of like this underground market to other sorcerers or sorceresses and stuff like that. So this one takes place primarily in Avalon, and if you guys are familiar with Arthurian myth, I highly recommend before reading this that you at least go and wiki Arthurian legend, because it'll just kind of clarify some things. All right, so my thoughts and feelings about this book. So we're on a quest to try and locate a person and a specific item that is going to help break a curse. And so we have our female protagonist and her kind of adopted brother, who is living under a curse, supposedly, that turns him kind of into a hound when he gets very emotionally distressed or scared. And he is not in control of his abilities, and she's trying to save him. So her whole mission in life is to save her brother. And so she is on a mission to try and find a magical item that will help her with that quest. And you're going to see that there's kind of enemies to friends to perhaps more that develops as well within this society. So there are some other people who are involved. It has quite a cast of side characters that gets added as you read on. Now, my overall thoughts about this book, I kind of thought this book was a hot mess. I think the premise was super interesting. I got very confused by Bracken's consistent calling her main characters fools all the time. Like, you're a fool for being misled. If you have limited information, you're not going to have all the answers. You know, they're going off of what they know, and to consistently be calling your characters fools throughout the entire book, how else, where were they supposed to get any kind of deeper information? That's probably the most aggravating thing about this book. I really didn't like the way that she but just to move a plot forward in terms of reveals, to constantly be calling her main characters fools. There's a lot of conversation about trust, about letting walls down and letting people in, which I think is very interesting because there's a lot of betrayal in this book. So it's kind of maybe I should keep my cards close to my chest after all. I don't know. That was just something that I got out of this book. But however, it ends on a huge cliffhanger. I did not want to continue this series, but now I feel cornered to do so. Now, I know that I can read an in-depth wiki review of the second book and get all of that filled in, but I don't like to do that. I think that's kind of, I like hop out. People should be able to do what they want to do, but I just cannot do that. So I will pick up the second one. I do really personally like this author. I think Alexandra Bracken is adorable. She's very, very funny when I've seen her interviewed. She cares a lot about what she writes, so this is not meant to be a super negative criticism. I just felt that this book needed more direction and less you're a fool plot device to move things forward, to reveal anything. It could have been different. I really wish that this had gone more Raiders of the Lost Ark. it had the potential to do so. So we start off with this really big world, and then it shrinks down incredibly. I wish we could have seen them do more locations and things like that. But while this book is flawed, like I said, the premise is interesting. I absolutely have to see where it's going. But overall, I didn't particularly enjoy my read of this book. I would give this probably like a 2-star. Premise is good, but the delivery, the execution just wasn't there for me. So, have that one. So, the next one I want to talk about. So, I read Rhapsodic by Laura Thalassa. Now, she had self-published. This is the first book in the Bargainer series. I have not read the other ones. I don't know if I will. You guys let me know what you think. But Rhapsodic, she had initially self-published, and she received a lot of heavy criticism about the female protagonist's best friend, who is a person of color, that she, used some really horrendous stereotypes, and it was very damaging, and so people really had a lot of negative things to say about it. So when she was picked up by a traditional publisher, apparently this series went through some heavy edits. And I never read her original book. All right, so I don't know. I'm just reporting what I've heard. But this one, which is traditionally published, did not have any of those stereotypes. It wasn't present, so all of that had been edited out and rewritten. So that was fine. I don't have any criticisms about that. However, if you were somebody who struggles with any kind of essay conversation, there's a lot of it heavily mentioned, nothing in graphic detail, but I just wanted to warn you about that. So in Rhapsodic, we have a girl who is half siren, and she works as a kind of a private investigator. She has her own firm, but when she was a child, she called upon this mythical being, the Bargainer, who is a fae, to get her out of some trouble. So she ends up killing someone and needs it to be covered up and taken care of. So she calls upon the Bargainer, and the Bargainer shows up, and because she was a minor, does this for free instead of exchanging for any kind of favor. And then she is so traumatized by what she had gone through, and he had come to her rescue, she calls upon him multiple times. And every time you make a bargain with the Bargainer, she gets a bead, and so she has rows and rows and rows. There's hundreds of them, all right, because she calls upon him repeatedly. And this big bracelet she can't take off, and she knows that at some point in time he's going to call in all of these favors. But a lot of the book focuses on her, where she is an adult in terms of this society that they live in, this kind of mythology sideline, alternate, whatever. But in our eyes, she's still a minor. So she's 16, 17. Now, her interactions with the Bargainer when she's calling upon him, when she's lonely. So she's at this fancy private school for magical creatures, basically. And so she calls upon him quite often. And he just really sit and watch movies and hang out. He draws and stuff. Now, she is in love with him. There's no question. Heavy girl crush, everything. But I had read a lot of criticisms about this where people thought that he was grooming her. I think that you could make a solid argument to support that if we were living in reality. Absolutely. He is an adult. He's someone that she comes to, that she had trusted, and all of these things. Absolutely. But this isn't reality, guys. This is not supposed to be any kind of representation of reality, right? These are magical creatures. The rules are different. This is the whole argument, when we talk about things like Twilight and Edward Cullen displaying stalkerish behavior. Dude's a vampire. He's not just a regular Joe guy crawling in this girl's bedroom and watching her sleep. There are different rules when you're dealing with fantasy fiction. It just is what it is. And you could just not like it, and you can absolutely say that it's grooming and all of this stuff. That's fair. You absolutely can think that. I just tend to allow for a little bit more flexibility when you're talking about magical creatures. They just process things differently. They're supposed to. They're not supposed to be a reflection of humanity. Like, this brings back the whole conversation I've had with, like, Amanda when we did Robin Hobb and talking about dragons. We want dragons to exhibit the same behaviors as people, but they're not people, they're dragons. So, just take it with a little grace. And so, anyway, the fact that he never makes a move with her while she's in the school and when she's calling upon him, when he actually knows that this is a trauma response, I actually don't think that it's creepy. But that's just my opinion. You could absolutely think it's creepy and hate these books. That's fine. I didn't love the book, just to be honest. But the whole grooming aspect was not something that... And I was watching for it because I had heard about that before I had read it. That I really felt was relevant in terms of an argument. You can hate the writing style. I felt this was very formulaic, that I've read things like this before. I didn't find it to be particularly original. So anyway, but you're bouncing back and forth between her forming this relationship with the bargainer very, very young, and then years and years later when she's fully an adult, where he comes back into her life and is asking her to help him solve a crime in his world. All right. So because he's actually like a king, he's like a fey king of a specific realm. So we have all of that going on. I did not find this mystery that they're trying to solve to be particularly compelling. I didn't really care that much. So that is why I'm not saying like that I would even recommend it. I might pick up the next ones. I think there's like 3 or 4 books in this series. They're not very big. I didn't find it to be particularly draining on my time. It's a fast read. It's not particularly dense. So if I'm just in the right kind of mood for it, maybe I'd pick it back up. I didn't hate it, but like this is like a solid like 3 maybe. It didn't wow me. It's a very mid book to me. All right. So the next one I have is all right. I'm trying to decide like if I want to order them like in terms of worst to best. I don't know. I'm not doing that, so it doesn't matter. Anyway. All right, so Light Lark. Light Lark was quite the conversation several months ago on social media with Alex Astor. This is her first novel. She's very, very young, and she's already gotten a book deal for this potential series. So, is it a series? I don't even know. I don't know enough about what's going to happen. So this is the Bookish Box edition, by the way. This is not how the actual cover. The actual cover, I think, is black, and it has like an anatomical red heart on the cover, I believe. So this is a special edition. But okay, so I wanted to read it. I wanted to read it because a lot of people really slammed it as being garbage. I wanted to see if it really was garbage or if it was just because it was so hyped up. You know. So I read it. I finished it. It wasn't DNF worthy. I do feel like she lost a lot of momentum towards the end. I did not find the end to have quite the payoff I think she was looking for. There are some very cringeworthy lines, but really you're talking about maybe 3 to 5 lines total that I thought were really like, why didn't somebody cut that? But it's fine. It didn't ruin my overall enjoyment of the book. It was just kind of like a speed bump, and then I just kept on rolling. It was fine. But I like our main character. I do. I like her. I think she's fine for like a YA book. In terms of like Hunger Games, a lot of people compared it to like a knockoff of the Hunger Games. I didn't really feel like that. Like there's a competition, but like it's over like 100 days. Like it's a long competition. It's not quite as action packed as you see with Hunger Games. Why is this cover not going back on? So yeah, I wouldn't make a comparison to the Hunger Games. Certainly not as well written as the Hunger Games series. There's no question. This is another one where I would probably put this at like a 2.5. I did enjoy my reading of this more than Silver in the Bone, which I give a solid 2. But this was not anything special. Like I said, it really started to unravel for me towards the end. I'm very interested, honestly, because this might be one of those things where the concept is kind of cool, but a movie might make it better. I would go see this in a movie format. Like, to me, this could be one of those really rare blue moon opportunities where the movie might be better than the source material. And I rarely, if ever, say that. So, actually, there's only 2 occasions where I say that. Stardust and Practical Magic. I hated the book Practical Magic. I was so excited to read it, and I thought the movie was way better. Not gonna lie. So anyway, so that's... so I go off on a tangent. You can check it out. Like I said, it's not a major commitment. I didn't think this book was really long. It's not a dense read. You could zip through it. But would I really waste a whole lot of time on it? No, I wouldn't. And she kind of left it with an ambiguous style ending where you could leave it off there and just, you know, put things together later. But she certainly left it open to be able to continue the series. I think the big comparison you would have with the Hunger Games is like the love triangle that doesn't really exist in the Hunger Games between Katniss and Peeta and oh my goodness, what's his name? This is mom brain. Just things don't connect anymore. But you know, I'm talking about the other guy that, you know, hunted with her. Ends up blowing up her sister. That guy. So, sorry, spoiler. Why am I cannot remember his name. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So you have kind of that similar vibe. There's kind of something going on. But to be honest, the 2 male characters are not given enough build up to really care one way or the other. Really, she could have ended up with either one of them and I would have been all right with it. So, but I think that she tried to do that where one guy kind of betrayed her in this irreparable way, similar to what the guy does in Hunger Games, the one I can't remember his name. And, or she ends up with the other guy who seems kind of milquetoast, because Peeta does, initially, at least in the first book, very milquetoast, but then he develops. So maybe that will happen if she does more sequels and they get further development. I don't know. I don't know if I would pick up the next book. It didn't end on enough of a cliffhanger like Silver on the Bone for me to want to give it another shot, so we're just going to leave that one alone. All right, so the next one, I'm going to do Bonded by Thorns. Okay, so this book is quite a departure from stuff that I normally read. I'm going to be honest, I have a soft spot for any kind of Beauty and the Beast retelling. I love it because it harkens back to Eros and Psyche, which is my favorite Greek myth. And I'm always looking to see how people do it. It's a story that I never get tired of. I know some people just have those where they don't mind reading every kind of rendition that can be done. That is where I sit with Beauty and the Beast. So this was... So this is a book that references a reverse harem. So it's a why choose book. So you have our main character who has multiple options where she's not pushed into a corner, so it's not a triangle, it's not ending up with one. She doesn't end up with anybody at the end of this one. This is the first in a series, and I think there's supposedly supposed to be 7. I don't know if I can stick out 7 books, but I do have the second one pre-ordered. It comes out the 13th, so we shall see. But I should really do a whole separate book or a whole separate video about this. I didn't hate it. I think that our main character is well developed. I think that the author pulled heavily from the original story Beauty and the Beast. I like how she is, even like looking at like Disney's Beauty and the Beast, because you absolutely see that influenced here. But like the whole, like her backstory, I found to be really compelling. There's abuse there. There's emotional abuse. There's some physical abuse. Her relationship with her father, I would like to see that developed more. But when she's there, so she's being held captive. So we understand how Beauty and the Beast goes. Everybody's familiar with that basic story. So when she exchanges herself for her father in this castle, there are 4 Fae princes there, representing like different realms. So we have like the winter, spring, summer, and autumn. And they're in this castle that's supposed to be kind of represented by all of these seasonal realms. And then we have this one kind of bad guy who represents the underworld, I guess. And he's kind of in there. There's a big secret that hasn't been revealed yet. So I'm kind of hooked to see where this is going to go. However, when we talk about spice levels, the spice isn't with her. We have 2 male protagonists who are in a relationship with each other, and there's a lot of love between the two of them. So there are 2 spicy scenes in here. Well, 3, but I don't count the other one. That one's pretty tame, really. And it's between the 2 male characters. I wasn't expecting that because with this being a reverse harem, I thought the focus would really be on male-female relationships and whatever that may entail with multiple male protagonists. We're not going to go there. I like to keep this as much as like PG-13 as I can. But I did not like the way that she wrote those scenes. And I have nothing whatsoever against male-male romance. I've read some that are fabulous and beautiful. And this felt too pornographic for me. So I actually skipped through those scenes. It was so gratuitously pornographic that I honestly, it leads to the stereotype, especially about women writing romance between 2 men, that you're not really representing a relationship. You're thinking of what you would see in like a pornographic film. And that is not very real to me, and I just couldn't vibe with that. I didn't like it. I wanted more of an emotional connection. I really wanted to see things build. And what's really interesting about that is that the emotional connection these 2 male characters have with each other when not doing those bedroom scenes is really nice and very beautiful, and I felt that it was deep. But for whatever reason, I guess just to bump up the spice level, it felt very kind of icky. With this being a female writer writing this, it felt very stereotypical. It felt really disingenuous, and I didn't like it. She could have left that out. She could have written them differently. I think she should have consulted with gay male authors to see about how they would like relationships translated. I just didn't think. I just thought that was a huge miss. I think she really tried to push for these spicy scenes, and it didn't pay off. They're very aggressive, and it wasn't for me. And then I feel like this is a book that is very much advertised and geared towards women. Now, I understand that there are some women who do like to read those romances, and that's more power to you. But for me, who was very much drawn, that is not, I didn't need that level of gratuitous sexual aggression. It just felt to be too much. It was a little over the top. But if you decide to pick this up, I don't know if I would really, this is not a book I would recommend to everyone. No. But if you're somebody who really likes like a spicy Beauty and the Beast, I wouldn't say not to pick it up, but just be aware that these scenes are in there that just, they feel a little too in your face. But if that's something that doesn't bother you, knock yourself out. I am not somebody who's going to shame anybody about what they read, obviously. But I was just in the mood to try something different. I had never read a reverse harem, so I wanted to see what it was about. This was not what I was anticipating or expecting, and I don't think this is what most people who read reverse harem are reading. So this is kind of just off in its own little world. But I will let you know if the story really picks up, if it's worth it with the second book. Because I think it's definitely worth picking up the second book. I mean, for me. But remember, I read a lot of stuff. I can go from like Robin Hobb and reading super dense fantasy fiction and science fiction to really, really fluffy stuff. I'm very much a mood reader. It just depends on what I'm looking for. If I don't really want to think a lot, this is the kind of book I'm going to pick up because it's fun. It's pure escapism. That's what I'm going to do. If I really want to get into it, I really want to be emotionally connected characters, that's when I turn to Hobb and I read more intense stuff. All right. So next, I'm coming out of fantasy. I did read Nora Roberts' yearly contemporary romance / thriller. Okay. I don't know if I've ever really talked about Nora Roberts on here. I've been a long-term Nora Roberts reader. I have read probably the vast majority of the things that she's written as Nora Roberts. Now, she writes under J.D. Robb. She has the In Death series. I've only read a couple of those, and those are there's more science fiction-y, police detective, futuristic stories. They're pretty interesting, but that's a very, very long series, and I have not read all of those. Like I said, just one or two. But I usually will pick up her yearly Nora Roberts contemporary thriller romance. And I'm going to tell you the reason why. Nora Roberts really investigates interesting careers. Careers you don't think about very much. Like, one was our protagonist, it was a rescue dog trainer. Another one, you have somebody who is an artist but does like metal art, like in terms of sculpture and things like that. And like, she takes the time to research and really lay out how that's done and what kind of life you have working in that kind of job. She did another one where it was like an exercise like influencer with a lot of like social media stuff and how somebody could potentially do that. She did another one where somebody who's like a voiceover artist who does book narrations and video game voices. You know, like, really interesting jobs. And so that is what makes me pick up these books every year, is like, what kind of job is she going to focus on that I've never heard of before or never really thought to investigate? To me, that's the most interesting thing. Now, some of these are better than others. Okay. Like the one she did with the metalworking artist where, I mean, she was a survivor of a mass shooting. That book was really good, and I forget the name of it. It's terrible. But I read that one multiple times. I really like that one. And other ones are more of a miss. This is a miss. Identity, she's a bartender. I didn't find the job to be particularly interesting. It doesn't mean that I think bartending's a crap job. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we all have a general idea of what goes into bartending. There weren't any surprises. I didn't learn anything new. I didn't find the romance to be particularly interesting. I didn't find our female and male characters to be really well fleshed out. This is a miss. Like I said, it's hit or miss. I'm always willing to give it a shot. Did I finish it? Yes. Because Nora Roberts she writes very readable books. But this wasn't it. Go back through and really look at some reviews for some of her other ones that are better than this. This wasn't it. Just throwing out there. Oh, she did another one where it was like a girl who does photography, but like stock photography. And I never knew how that worked. And then everything was explained to me. And I love that. Or sometimes she'll do things with like really cute like store owners that own bookstores. She like that'd be like a dream job for me. So I really like that. So that's most of the time they're really appealing to me. This wasn't for me. I didn't like it. I honestly think that there was an opportunity for our main character to work with her mother and grandmother who own a store, who are opening up a bar and like tea shop. I really wish that she had gone in the direction of really solidifying the family relationship with the character's mother and grandmother and have her work there and have this kind of like generational representation. I would have loved that so much more than her going and like working in a bar for the resort in this town, which is essentially what happens. So anyway, just a little discussion about the story. We have this girl who's targeted by a guy. She works in a bar. She's been saving money. Her dream is to like own her own house and her own bar eventually, and she gets targeted by this guy who steals her identity, ends up like murdering someone close to her, so she has to leave. And so meanwhile this guy's on the lam, but meanwhile she was supposed to be the victim. He doesn't get her, so then he obsesses about her and starts sending her things, so the FBI is after him, knowing that he's going to come around and try and get her again. So she moves back in with her mother and grandmother and tries to start her life over in this like small resort ski town in like Maine. All right, so that's essentially what's happening. So of course she's going to end up falling in love with one of the resort owners, things like that. These are always very predictable, but like I said, sometimes she really focuses on some really cool careers, and that's what makes it worth it. Okay, so the final book I wanted to talk about was the one that I actually enjoyed the most out of the 6 books that I had to cover today. So we have A Broken Blade by Melissa Blair. So this is the Bookish Box edition, the red one. There's also one that's like a silver and purple. This, to me, was the best one that I've read of the 6, for sure. A Broken Blade. This one was really good. I really enjoyed this book. I thought that our female main character was really good. There's a little bit of queer representation, which was really interesting. I don't know if there's another one. I haven't read the sequel. I know there's going to be a third one. I think there might be 4 books total. I'm not sure how far the series is going to go. But this is taking place in a fictional kingdom, where you have humans and you have halflings, and then there are dark fae and fae and elves. And so halflings are like half human, half elf, and they're horribly brutalized, where if you can be identified because they have like a different color blood, like it's not like red, it's like an amber colored color. And even if it doesn't matter like how, as if you have that blood, you can be taken and enslaved. And in the society, female halflings are taken as children and trained to be kind of like the military, like the elite military presence of this kingdom and work for the king. So our main character, Kira, is the blade for the king. And he's supposed to be human, and supposedly in like the myths, in terms of being able for them to have conquered the fae, or the elves, sorry, from this realm, that with every elf he killed adds a year onto his life. And so there's a mystery behind that in terms of why the king is so long lived. So there's big questions about immortality as well. And so anyway, Kira she's a halfling, and she works as the king's blade. So she goes and kind of does all of the king's dirty work and hunts down any kind of nefarious dealings. And also can turn in halflings. Turns out she hates her life. She hates doing this. She hates targeting her own people. And we see that she meets up with kind of resistance fighters, and she has to make a choice in terms of what she's going to do. And this whole journey doing these things, and then realizing that, yes, we need to thwart the king. How are we going to do this? There's a lot of, kind of lead up. Did I find parts of this book absolutely predictable? Yes. It's a fantasy book. It doesn't mean like all fantasy books are super predictable, but I mean, they can be formulaic in a way. I mean, you kind of know where we're going to end up, but there's a lot of like lead-ins always about somebody who you think is bad ends up being good, kind of like this double agent. And I thought the slow burn romance in here, because it is definitely more of a romantasy, was very strong. I actually really liked it. I found the relationship between them to be very honest in terms of the world that they're living in, realistic. So I enjoyed that quite a bit. And I really enjoyed her backstory. You do have some trigger warnings for this. We'll definitely talk about a little bit of like sexual assault situations going on, not in graphic detail whatsoever, but alcoholism and dealing with an addiction is covered quite heavily in here. So if that's a trigger for anybody, just be aware of that. But I really enjoyed this one, and I'll absolutely be getting the next one. I hope Bookish Box, I'd rather not get another copy and then have to get a special edition to match this one. So rumor has it that Bookish Box will be coming out with the next one of this, and I will definitely pick it up because I really enjoyed this one. And I do recommend it. It's a little kind of Robin Hood-y, which I enjoy. I enjoy that story. I think it's interesting. Kind of like if like the sheriff of Nottingham decided to not be a jerk and join in with Robin Hood and his band of merry men. Basically is where I would make the comparison. But I did enjoy this. I thought this was a lot of fun. Dealt with some heavy topics, but I was invested in the characters. I want to see how things are going to work out. The side characters are very well developed. Definitely leads into where there's going to be more happening, and I'm here for it. Like, I'm ready for that. So I definitely recommend this one. I don't have too much to say about it, only because like I feel like I'm going to give too many spoilers, and this, out of all of the books that I talked about today, would be the one that I'd recommend you guys pick up, because I did think that this was a solidly well-written book compared to the other ones. So definitely give this one a peek. And so those are the 6 books I had for you. Sorry, I did intend for this video to move faster, but I had a lot to say, as usual. And anyway, but I look forward to seeing you next time with some more reviews or unboxings. See you later.